All right. Well, our guest has just gotten here. He is a part-time ARCA Menards Series racer. Everybody, welcome in Presley Sorah. Well, Presley, I did a quick introduction. I mentioned you're a part-time ARCA racer. Talk a little bit about what all you race, what you've raced so far in your career, and what races you're looking at racing this year in the ARCA Series.
Yeah, so I'm a driver in the NASCAR ARCA Menards series. I've been racing since I was 10 years old. I started out in go-karts and soapbox derby cars here in the state of Indiana, and I went kind of less traditional route. I went through sim racing to kind of continue advancing my career after go-karts, and used success in the sim racing world and various iRacing championships, such as Monday Night Racing in 2022, to get my name out into the real world racing scene. And then that got me opportunities in 2023 to race locally. And then I've been racing in the ARCA series since 2024.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's sort of William Byron esque how he came up through and getting his name out there. So that's and you know what, real racer, iRacer, show up on the thing, you already got the steering wheel in front of you. So
Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
we never stop.
That is true. That is very true.
Well, Presley, you're the third ARCA driver we've had up here, and I love talking to the small time drivers because that a lot of times they give the honest perspective and like how it is behind the scenes. Chris Golden's been on here before; he's racing some ARCA East series, and Caleb Costner's had been in the ARCA series for a little while now. He's been on this program. He's racing some now in the truck series, which is awesome to see. Uh, everybody we talk to, the hardest thing right now is sponsorship, finances, and so coming from your perspective on obviously very likely a small town team, what have you seen to that make it's either beneficial lately or it's a struggle for small time teams getting those finances, getting those races because everybody wants to be the next Kyle Larson, William Byron, but you have to be seen by the right person. So it's what have you been able to do to like get your name out there and get more opportunities in these series?
Yeah, so I'm a first generation racer, so nobody in my family has ever raced before me. So I've kind of just paved my own way with it. And, I don't come from a family with money. So, I race on the weekends, and Monday through Friday, I hold a regular job. So, I'm just working to get by like everybody else is. But I think the toughest thing for me is just having the time to do everything that I need to
Yep.
do, because I have to balance, obviously, working my regular job plus finding the marketing partners, which is a whole process with emails, phone calls. I spend so much time doing it every day. And then, you've got to prepare for the races as well. So it's like you're trying to cram like 3 or 4 days worth of stuff into one day every day. So that's the toughest thing in my opinion. And so much of that does go on behind the scenes as well. So, a lot of the time when you're looking on the TV and watching the races, I mean, that is what you see. When the TV window opens, you see, a couple of cut scenes with drivers. They'll interview a couple drivers and then they race. So, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes just to get to the track. And obviously, the racing is difficult. Obviously, if it wasn't difficult, then anybody could do it. But I really feel like the toughest part is just getting yourself the opportunities to get to the racetrack. And then once you get to the racetrack, then it's kind of second nature because you've been doing it for so long. So, yeah, it's tough. It's definitely different than any of the other sports out there. Obviously, NFL players aren't necessarily going out and looking for sponsorship funding to go do an NFL game. So, NASCAR and just motorsports in general are so different in that aspect where obviously you do have to have talent to get anywhere in motorsports, but you've also got to have the connections and the marketing partners and everything to help back you to get there as well.
Well, the
Now,
good news is this day and age, you got social media, and there are better ways now than it was back in the day, and it's definitely cool to see that because it gives small time drivers like yourself, Caleb, that opportunity to be able to network themselves throughout every type of social media platform. I saw you have Instagram. I assume you well, like I would assume TikTok probably maybe I don't
Mhm.
know. It seems like all the younger drivers are like getting into that to get their name out, which is great because that algorithm starts clicking and that people start noticing. It only takes that one person to really notice, and I think that's really awesome. Did you race at? I think I saw you raced at Daytona this year in the ARCA series. And
Yes,
how
I
did that
did.
go?
Yeah, so Daytona went really, really well in my opinion. The only thing that didn't end up good with Daytona was just the finishing result. I
Yeah.
feel like everything leading up to it went really well. All of our social media content and promotion stuff, everything at the track went well on practice day, qualifying day. There was 50 entries for 40 spots, so there was 10 guys that had to go home just off qualifying. So my car, we were going to be right on the cutoff of having a points provisional or not from last year. So it was going to be a little sketchy no matter what. But thankfully, I timed my way in and qualified P21, I believe, out of the 50 cars. And thankfully, I did because the way the qualifying ended up shaking out, I actually wouldn't have had enough points. So I'd have been one of the DNQs. So that all went really well. We had a plan for the race that I think would have worked out well, and we were just kind of biding our time for most of the race because we knew that I had a really, really fast car. I can't even stress enough how good the car was. I couldn't have asked for anything more from my team. But unfortunately, like right before our go point, it was 28 laps to go in the race. I assume it was a piece of debris. We don't really know for sure, but something on the track cut open it was our left rear tire, and it was a hole about this big. I mean, it wasn't huge, but enough to where
Enough to yeah.
obviously, when you're going 185 miles an hour, it's going to cause some issues. So, um, seemed like I had a slow leak for a couple laps. I had a little inkling of it getting loose, and then yeah, it just blew into 3 with no big vibration, no noise or anything. It just went down. So thankfully I ended up catching it, didn't hit anything. Went for a little 190-mile-an-hour joyride, but yeah, kept it off the wall, nursed it back to pit road, got the damage fixed and everything, and made it to the checkered.
Now, you were saying about getting into marketing partners and everything is the big part of it. Do you have a background in marketing, or is it something you just kind of learn as you go? I mean, not everybody can just come up and talk to companies and corporations and be like, "Hey, here's why I think you should give me some money so we can go racing." Is it
Yeah,
like did you learn that as you were kind of going on, or
I've just picked it up as I've been going. I
okay,
had no background in marketing whatsoever. It was just something that the iRacing and sim racing stuff progressed so quickly, and then I got thrown into a local level race car, and it was just something I just kind of had to learn on the fly. And through the sim racing stuff, I met some buddies in the real world and kind of bounced feedback and stuff off of them to help learn and pick up the process. But I mean, for the most part, it's just kind of trial and error. And truthfully, like obviously, yeah, you can go to school for marketing and you can do different, various things to help improve it. But what works for one driver or team isn't necessarily going to work for a different driver and team. So
right?
it's hard to even really take too much advice. Obviously, you take it, to some level, but you kind of just have to do it yourself and see what works for you and see what you have success with. And that's kind of what I've done. And, just try to up my game every time I race.
Shoot, learning as you go. I mean, we're still that's how we are with this whole podcast. Is
That's
we're
how we
learning as
roll.
we go on it as well, and how to network things on the social media. So I definitely hear you there. Uh, it's awesome to see. What are the plans? Are you planning on racing Charlotte? I know that's a big opportunity to potentially have marketing opportunities like that. Is that an option that you guys were going to race ARCA there? Or?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not going to Charlotte this year. They ended up taking Charlotte off the schedule, and we're actually going to Chicagoland instead, which I'm happy
Well,
with.
that's
I
cool.
love
That's awesome.
Chicagoland.
That's
So
awesome. Chicagoland's awesome.
I think that track will be really, really good for the ARCA series because it should be multi-groove, I would think, and it's going to be super bumpy after all the years with no racing, and it should have a lot of character. So that's one I would like to do. Obviously, like I need the marketing partners to do it, so that's something I'm working on. So there's nothing set in stone, but there's quite a bit of races over the summer that I'm targeting that I'd really, really like to do. So my home race, Indianapolis Raceway Park, is July 23rd, I believe, or 24th,
Awesome.
sometime in the end of July. So that's always one I try to target every year. And there's some races up in Michigan and Chicagoland up there as well. So some closer races to me that I would like to do. And then there's some good ones in the fall as well. So nothing coming up real soon. No Kansas, no Talladega for me, but hoping I can definitely get in quite a few over the summer.
Well, I'm just browsing through your website. So if anybody's watching, go to presleysorah.com. If you click on the partners link, you have a rendering of your number 9 car. That thing is gorgeous.
Yes.
That is a beautiful, beautiful car.
Yes, it's my favorite that I've ever raced. I feel like I've had some pretty good looking race cars while I've been driving, and that one is my favorite by far. You couldn't miss it. And I'll tell you what, the pictures look really cool, but there's nothing that did it any justice. You had to see it in person down there in February. It was something to behold.
We had Hall of Fame sprint car driver Sammy Swindell on our channel, and we were talking about how he always had such good looking cars. And one thing he mentioned and never really thought about it, he was like, I always wanted to make sure when you saw that car, you knew that was him. You know, and it's like you could pick out, you see the car, you see the number, you know the sponsor, and then after he said that, you start looking at cars, be like, what number was that one? Which car? You know, like your car, you're going to spot that one. It would be like, oh, there it is. So that's really. I thought that was very insightful from Sammy. I was like, you know what? I never ever really thought of that. Then you see these other cars where you can't see the number. It's like they have a black car and a black number. And it's like, okay, that's. You think the sponsors really want it to pop like yours is doing. That's really cool. Like even under your photos with the actual car, it looks just as good as that rendering.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it looks
That's
really,
sharp.
really good.
The sucker's sharp. The whole graphic's actually really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it turned out great. And one of the tough things I guess about being kind of in the midfield on back in the ARCA series is and especially when you're racing part-time like I am, like I don't have a set number every week. I don't even necessarily have a set team every week. I mean, I've raced for several different teams over the last few years. So I'm working a lot behind the scenes here to really kind of immortalize that number 9 car from Daytona because it is such a good looking race car. And I feel like that race was the biggest one that I've done so far. So I think if anybody's going to think of me and think of the ARCA series, they're going to think of that car, hopefully, compared to other cars I've driven in the past. So, yeah, we're doing a lot to help immortalize that thing. And I can't say too much yet, but there's some really exciting stuff going on.
Well, we're excited.
People, okay. Just explain a little bit. Like if you're looking at the cars, be like, well, it says it's a Fusion. Real quick, can you explain the rules for ARCA as far as the car and the body that you're allowed to run?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is like all of the cars themselves. The only difference really is that outer shell. So pretty much all the teams are running Ilmor motors. So it's a fairly spec motor across the board. There's a few that are old legacy Chevy motors and old Roush Yates motors, which they don't quite have the power as what the Ilmor does. But like all the big teams, my car at Daytona, like those are all Ilmors. And really for the big tracks, we're all running Ilmor motors. But yeah, it is kind of different in the ARCA series. Whereas like, obviously in the Cup series, if you're running a Ford, you have to run a Mustang. If you're running a Chevy, you've got to run a Camaro. Toyota, you got to run a Camry. So it is different. In ARCA, we can run Fusions or Mustangs. It's totally up to us, whatever the team has. So actually, the team that I drove for at Daytona, Andy Hillenberg Fast Track Racing, they have they've got Chevys, they've got Toyotas, they've got Mustangs, they've got Fusions. So I've gosh, I drove a couple Toyotas for them. Drove the Ford Fusion at Daytona. They also had a Mustang down there testing. So yeah, I mean it's a pretty wide range of stuff down there. But yeah, there is no like set manufacturer uh, deal in ARCA where like if you're driving a Ford, you have to run a Mustang. That's not what we have. So and that helps cut the costs down a lot for
Yeah.
some of the smaller teams because for the most part, the smaller teams are what run the Fusions. Most of the bigger teams do run the Mustangs. So there's not really much of a competitive difference between the two. The shape itself is fairly similar aside from the nose. But yeah, it is a cost-cutting measure for some of the team owners and allows them to use whatever they have.
So that's what I was going to say. That's got to be exceptionally helpful for teams to be able to cut costs and not have that set. You have to run this more expensive body type. So that's cool that they're able to do that, to give people that opportunity. And it also I've seen that it helps that it's not the regular cautions where like pit stops, you don't have to do your normal pit stops. You can take your time, get it done, don't lose track position. That helps the smaller teams too. Saw that in person with Caleb, and that was awesome to have everybody pretty much a level playing field, so it doesn't the one team that spends millions of dollars a year and they're basically a whole full-fledged NASCAR team as opposed to smaller teams like your teams. It kind of evens the playing field. So some small things like that in ARCA you really appreciate to see and to make it better and give people that hope and opportunity that they can go on and do bigger and better things, which is awesome. One thing I want to leave with you, every guest we have on, for the most part, we try to get. So I assume you follow like NASCAR and the Cup Series and things like that. So what we do every week, we already finished up our segment. Is we have a NASCAR fantasy, and we also gave our race picks this week. We gave our race picks for Bristol heading this week. Who are you looking at that has a good shot to win, and who? I guess your pick to win Bristol this week in the NASCAR Cup Series.
Yeah, I saw that they changed the tire compound, and I have a feeling it's probably going to be a little bit more similar to what they had in the last few next gen races that didn't have a bunch of tire wear. So in those, Kyle Larson completely stomped the field. I think he led like 440 laps out of 500 in the night race a couple years ago. So if that tire is like that, I think Larson's probably going to be pretty tough to beat. I would say my two would be Larson or Hamlin, but
Yes,
gosh, I'm
I picked
biased towards
Hamlin.
the
They
six.
picked.
I'm biased towards the 6 car. Keselowski's always been my favorite since I've been little. So he's had a good year, just short all the time on winning. I think he's got like some absurd number, like 14 second place finishes over like the last 5 years. So I don't know. I'm hoping the 6 car wins or one of the RFK boys, but I think Hamlin's been really good this season. Larson's been really good at Bristol, depending on the tire compound. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
I'm interesting to see they have the higher horsepower package at this one, so maybe that different tire compound, but now you have the higher horsepower. How that affects the tire wear, it might even it out a little bit. As long as it's not where the tires completely shred after 10 laps, like they had a couple years ago, was like a cheese grater on the track. I'm all for it. I picked Hamlin. Dad picked Kyle Larson. So I guess we're all kind of in that playing field right now. So
Yeah.
Hey, great minds think alike. What do you
Yeah,
got?
no kidding. That's pretty insane, actually.
Well, speaking of RFK, I was actually so I work. I'm a police officer in Concord, and the RFK shop's actually in my area. I was actually just parked there last night, just checking on the property. So funny that you just mentioned RFK.
Wow,
It just came to my mind right there. Presley, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on here. Everybody give Presley a follow on Instagram, TikTok, all social media. His website is very well done. It's very professional. So check his website out.
Yeah, make sure we.
All you got
put the
to
link in the
do is
description.
all you got to do is just type in his name on Google and his website will pop up right away. I don't. Do you have any merchandise on the website that if anybody want to look at that? I haven't looked really detailed on that, but if I've assumed maybe some merchandise because that car that you race at Daytona, that's some badass T-shirts if you had that made.
Yes, so we have awesome looking T-shirts with the Daytona car on the website right now. So if you go to PresleySorah.com, go to the shop, and everything's right on there.
I might check it out myself because that car it shows up so well, and that and I always talk about like that car would make a really cool looking T-shirt on a bunch of everybody's cars. Like that one's cool, that one's cool. That one definitely for sure is. But
Yeah.
Presley, we appreciate you. Hopefully, we'll get you back on in the future. Good luck with everything, and see you in Chicagoland. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks
you have
for
a good one.
stopping by.
Thank you.